It was a cold, gray morning in São Paulo. The ever-bustling streets seemed even more somber, filled with the rumble of buses and the hurried footsteps of people seeking refuge from the chill. In front of a traditional bakery in the city center, where the scent of fresh bread and hot coffee mingled with the sweet aroma of cakes, a German shepherd suddenly appeared. He seemed out of place, a somber figure amidst the urban rush. His lean body trembled, and his matted, soiled fur told a story of hard days on the streets. But what truly captured the eye were his large brown eyes, which pleaded not just for food, but for something far more profound. He did not bark or lunge. He simply stood there, quiet, with a dignity steeped in sorrow, watching each customer as if they might be his last hope. Inside the bakery, the owner, Carolina, first noticed the dog while arranging a tray of cakes. Her heart skipped a beat. She had seen many stray dogs wandering through Sao Paulo, but there was something different about this one. He looked as if he was on the verge of giving up, yet he still possessed a simple sweetness. From time to time he would hesitantly lift a paw, as if wanting to knock on the door, but he never did, as if waiting for a sign that never came. Soon, the customers began to notice as well. An elderly woman murmured about how the dog reminded her of a German shepherd she had lost many years ago, while a young man tossed his bread away and looked at the animal with a mixture of guilt and pity. But no one took action. Life in the city continued, swallowing such stories without a second thought. As the day began to fade, Carolina stepped outside to throw away some leftover bread. The dog, still there, rose slowly. He didn't run or jump. He approached cautiously until his paw touched Carolina's hand. She froze, feeling the cold, damp touch. For an instant, all the noise of the city seemed to vanish, leaving only her and that intense gaze. It was then she realized the dog wasn't simply lost. He was waiting for someone, for one last chance. Carolina stood paralyzed, the weight of his paw a silent plea that touched her soul. The deafening roar of engines, footsteps, and voices ceased for a moment. In that silence, staring into the dog's sad eyes, she felt a familiar ache, as if long-suppressed memories were stirring. "You're lost, aren't you?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The dog tilted his head, as if he understood. He didn't move away or demand anything. He simply waited. It was this silence that moved her most. The simple fact of his existence, his fragile dignity in the midst of the city's harshness. Carolina knelt, ignoring the cold seeping through the concrete. She ran a hand over his tangled fur and felt the sharp bones beneath his skin. It was clear he was weak, but something in him refused to yield to adversity. It was as if the dog had decided not to give up, even when everything suggested he should. Inside the bakery, a few customers watched through the glass, some with curiosity, others with indifference or even disapproval. "You can't let a stray like that in here," a man grumbled as he passed with a shopping bag. But Carolina ignored him. Something told her this meeting was no accident. She took a deep breath and opened the door. "Come on, friend," she said firmly. The dog hesitated, looking at her as if he couldn't believe the invitation. Slowly, he took the first step, crossing the threshold from the cold outside into the warmth within. He shook his body, sending small droplets of water onto the wooden floor. Carolina grabbed a cloth to clean the mess, and as she prepared a bowl of water and some pieces of bread, she realized this moment was unlike any she had ever experienced. The dog was not just a problem to be solved. He seemed to hold a secret, something she was about to discover, something that would change her life forever. The next morning, The bakery was busier than usual. News of the German Shepherd had spread through the neighborhood, and customers came not only for bread and coffee, but also to see the unexpected visitor. The dog rested in a corner near the counter, watching everything with calm, attentive eyes, barely moving. His presence subtly transformed the atmosphere of the place. As she served her customers, Carolina couldn't stop looking at him, a feeling stirring within her, perhaps guilt or old memories that insisted on resurfacing. While making a cappuccino, she recalled her childhood in the suburbs and a very similar German shepherd named Rex, whom she had lost. "Are you going to keep him?" a familiar voice asked. It was Mrs. Renata, a regular customer who always bought a bag of bread. "A dog like this won't last long on the streets," she commented, her gaze full of concern. Carolina hesitated. "I don't know yet. He just showed up yesterday. I'm not sure if he's a stray or if he ran away from someone." Mrs. Renata leaned in, studying the animal closely. "Whoever let him go doesn't deserve to have him back. Look at him. It's as if he's waiting for someone." Carolina silently agreed, feeling there was something more to this dog, something beyond hunger or abandonment. He seemed to carry a story that no one else could hear. Later, when the bakery was empty, Carolina sat on the floor beside the dog, stroking his still matted coat. He lifted his head and met her gaze with such intensity that she felt a lump form in her throat, as if he wanted to reveal a secret or make a silent request. Overcome with emotion, she asked without thinking, "What happened to you, friend? What are you trying to tell me?" That night, she decided to take him home. It wasn't planned, but she couldn't bear to leave him in the bakery, not with the bitter cold outside. As they walked along the lamp-lit sidewalks, with the distant sounds of cars and conversations, Carolina noticed something special. The dog walked by her side with the posture of a faithful friend, never pulling or hesitating, as if he were long accustomed to accompanying someone. When they reached her small apartment in an old building, she opened the door and turned on the light. The dog entered slowly, looking around calmly, as if he already knew the place. A shiver ran down her spine, but she quickly dismissed the thought. She got a towel and some warm water and began to gently clean him, careful not to cause him any pain. As she worked, she noticed a thin scar on his neck, the mark of a collar worn too tight. She paused, touching the scar delicately, and murmured, "You belonged to someone, didn't you?" The dog held her gaze as if he understood every word. A strange weight settled in her chest, as if the final piece of a puzzle was about to fall into place. Later, as she settled onto the sofa with a cup of tea, the dog lay at her feet, his breathing slow and even. The quiet of the moment brought unwanted memories to the surface. Carolina remembered Rex, her childhood German shepherd, her best friend and her refuge from difficult times, until the day her father, in a fit of rage, decided he was a burden and sent him to a shelter. She never found out what happened to Rex after that. "It can't be," she whispered, looking at the sleeping dog. The idea seemed absurd, yet there was something about him that made her feel as if she were looking at a ghost from her past. She laughed softly at herself. "I'm just fooling myself." But later that night, as she tried to sleep, she heard a faint noise from the living room. She rose quietly and found the dog sitting by the window, gazing down at the streetlights, as if waiting for something or someone. In that instant, Carolina realized that perhaps it wasn't she who was saving him, but he who had come to save her. The next morning, she was awakened by a soft tap on her bedroom door. The German Shepherd was sitting there, his eyes patient and alert, calmly signaling his need to go out. "You want to go outside?" Carolina asked, still sleepy. The dog tilted his head, and she understood. She threw on a coat, fashioned a makeshift leash, and they went downstairs. Outside, he began to walk in a definite direction, without hesitation. Intrigued, Carolina followed as he ignored the noise of traffic and the morning crowds, leading her around busy corners and down quiet alleys. After nearly half an hour, they arrived at a small, deserted park nestled between tall buildings. The dog stopped near an old wooden bench and stared intently at a gnarled tree nearby. A chill ran through Carolina. "Why here?" she asked aloud, trying to understand the significance of the place. As she looked around, the features of the park sparked a distant memory. It was the same park where she used to bring Rex as a child, a sanctuary from the shouting and arguments at home. Her heart pounded in her chest. "Have you been here before?" she whispered. The dog simply looked at her, as if the answer was obvious. Unsure what to do, Carolina sat on the bench, her mind racing. It seemed impossible. The dog couldn't be Rex, could he? Yet the more she watched him, the more she felt an undeniable connection. Suddenly, an elderly woman approached, carrying a bag of bread to feed the birds. She stopped, her eyes fixed on the dog in recognition. "I've seen this dog before," she said softly. Carolina turned to her quickly. "What do you mean?" The woman hesitated, gesturing toward the animal. "A few years ago, he used to wander around a shelter in this neighborhood. Then he disappeared. It was like he went off in search of someone." The woman's words echoed in Carolina's mind as she walked home, the dog at her side. The idea that he had been searching for someone felt like a clue, a riddle she couldn't yet solve. The journey back was a blur of childhood memories and a gnawing sense of guilt. She wondered if she was just projecting her own feelings onto the dog, or if there was something deeper at play. That night, with the dog sleeping on the rug, Carolina decided to act. She sat down at her computer and began searching for information about the shelter the woman had mentioned. After several attempts, she found it. Lar dos Bichos, the pet home, a small shelter located in a neighborhood near where she had grown up. Her heart raced. She wrote down the address and resolved to go there the next day with the dog. The following morning, they took the subway to the old neighborhood. The ride was silent, but Carolina's mind was a storm of thoughts. When they arrived, the shelter looked exactly as she had imagined. A rusty fence, a crooked gate, and a simple building with peeling paint. A middle-aged woman with a kind face and simple clothes greeted them. "Can I help you?" Carolina quickly explained how she had found the dog and mentioned what the old woman had said. The caregiver, who introduced herself as Helena, looked closely at the German Shepherd and recognized him at once. "Oh yes, I remember this one. We called him Lucky. He came to us a few years ago with an old collar and marks on his neck. He stayed for a while, but one day he just vanished. We never found out where he went." "Lucky," Carolina murmured, kneeling beside him. The dog looked at her, as if awaiting a response. "Did he belong to someone?" she asked, her voice trembling. Helena shook her head. "We never found his owner, but he was special. He always seemed to be waiting for someone. He never really bonded with anyone here, no matter how kind we were." Carolina felt another piece of the puzzle click into place. As she stroked the dog, Helena continued. "You know, There was something curious about him. When we found him, there was a small metal object attached to his collar, a locket, with a name engraved on it. Carolina's heart hammered against her ribs. What was the name? Helena went inside the shelter and returned with a worn envelope. Inside was a silver locket, the letters faded by time. With trembling hands, Carolina read the name engraved on its surface and forgot to breathe. It was a name she never thought she would see again. Rex. She stood frozen, holding the locket as if it were a fragment of a dream. "This is impossible," she whispered. "It can't be the same Rex." Years, perhaps a decade, had passed. But as she looked at the German shepherd beside her, that familiar feeling returned with overwhelming intensity. His calm eyes seemed to say that he had known all along. "Are you sure he came with this locket?" Carolina asked Helena, trying to steady her voice. The caregiver nodded, her gaze fixed on the piece of metal. "Yes, he was wearing it when he arrived. We kept it because it seemed important, but no one ever came to claim it." Helena noticed the profound change in Carolina's expression. "Do you recognize the name?" Carolina hesitated, torn between the logic of coincidence and the feeling in her soul. "I had a dog named Rex when I was a child," she admitted, her voice thick with emotion. "He was a German shepherd, too. My father. He took him away one day, and I never knew where he went." She held up the locket, as if it held both an answer and another question. Helena looked at her with deep understanding. I can't explain it. Lucky, or Rex. As you know him, he appeared here a few years ago. We never knew where he came from, but he always seemed to be searching for someone. Perhaps even for you." Despite the absurdity, those words echoed deeply within Carolina. The dog, now calm at her side, appeared finally at home. With tears streaming down her face, she stroked his clean, soft fur. Rex, or Lucky as he had been called, drew closer and rested his head in her lap. In that simple gesture, Carolina felt a peace she hadn't known in years. It didn't matter if the story made no sense. What mattered was that, somehow, they were together again. The walk back home felt longer than ever. Carolina clutched the medallion in one hand while holding the improvised leash of the German shepherd with the other. Now, she could only call him Rex, who walked beside her with calm, purposeful steps, as if he knew exactly where he belonged. The medallion weighed heavily in her palm, carrying all the memories of a childhood she thought she had left behind. Upon reaching her apartment, Carolina closed the door and sank to the floor, still gripping the medallion. Rex stayed there, his head tilted slightly, as if waiting for her to speak. The room, usually cozy, now felt heavy with the weight of that revelation. "How did you manage to find your way back to me?" she murmured, more to herself than to the dog. "Years have passed, and I had no idea where you were." She vividly recalled the scorching summer day when Rex was taken away, her father impatient and irritable, declaring the dog a burden. Despite her tears and pleas, his cold resolve silenced any protest. When she returned from school that day, the yard was empty, and Rex was gone. "I thought you were—" she choked on the word, "lost." But here he was, at her feet, proving that something greater than fate had brought them together again. As she ran her hand through his now clean and soft fur, Carolina felt a connection so intense it defied time. In the days that followed, she couldn't stop thinking about Rex. His story, as Lucky from the shelter, spread through the neighborhood, and some of her bakery customers even left small gifts, treats, toys, and a new bed for him. Yet, Carolina sensed that Rex's journey wasn't fully complete. One evening, while sifting through old documents in a forgotten box in the closet, she found a childhood photo of herself with Rex, taken in that very park where he had recently led her. Touching the photo gently, tears filled her eyes. The dog in the image was proof that Rex had always been her refuge, even in the hardest times. She placed the photo beside the medallion on her nightstand, then went to the living room where Rex lay on the rug, eyes closed but breathing steadily. Leaning against the wall, she whispered, "I don't know how you did it, but thank you for coming back home." For the first time in ages, she felt they were exactly where they belonged, together, in their home. The next morning, Carolina was awakened by a soft knock at the door. Rex, ever alert, lifted his head and fixed his gaze on the entrance. When she opened it, she found Helena, the shelter caregiver, holding a small envelope. "Sorry to drop by unannounced, but I thought this might interest you," Helena said with a serious look, handing it over. Inside was an old shelter form detailing the day Rex arrived, thin, with scars on his neck and signs of malnutrition. The most intriguing part was a note with an incomplete address and the name Mr. Cardoso. Helena explained that the address had been on Rex's old collar, but they could never trace the owner. "Maybe you can uncover more," she added before leaving. As the door closed, Carolina felt a mix of curiosity and unease. The name and address stirred painful memories of her father and his harsh decisions from her childhood. With Rex at her feet, she opened her laptop and began searching. The inquiry led her to a street in São Paulo, but the exact number was missing, leaving it shrouded in mystery. Determined to find answers, she prepared Rex for a walk and hailed a taxi, her heart pounding with every mile. When they arrived at the street, the old houses and overgrown gardens seemed frozen in time. Slowly, Carolina and Rex strolled along, examining every detail, until they reached a rusted gate with a faded sign bearing the name Cardozo, barely visible under fallen leaves. A shiver ran through her as she pushed the gate open. It creaked loudly as she followed the path to a modest house with broken windows and peeling walls. Rex paused beside her, his eyes fixed on the door as if he knew this was the place. Hesitantly, Carolina knocked, but there was no answer. Peering through a window, she saw a dusty interior with antique furniture and scattered boxes. Just as she was about to leave, an elderly neighbor appeared. "Are you looking for Mr. Cardoso?" he asked. Carolina shared a brief version of her story, and the man nodded. "He moved away years ago. He was a solitary man, but he took great care of that dog. He always said the dog was waiting for someone important, someone he could never quite let go of." The neighbor's words left Carolina deep in thought as she returned home with Rex by her side. Though many pieces of the puzzle still didn't fit, one thing was clear. Rex had traveled a long way to find her. Perhaps Mr. Cardozo had been just a temporary guardian, caring for Rex until the right moment to return him to his true owner. Back in the apartment, Carolina sat on the sofa with Rex beside her, holding the medallion in one hand and the shelter form in the other. Her mind swirled with unanswered questions. Who was Mr. Cardozo, and how had Rex survived and found his way back? The apartment's silence seemed to hold meanings she couldn't decipher, while Rex remained calm, as if he already knew the answers. As she stroked his head, she noticed something she had overlooked before. On the back of the medallion, A faded inscription read, "It's never too late." Those simple words carried unexpected weight, and she read them repeatedly, feeling they were a message for both of them. Perhaps fate was giving them a second chance to mend what was lost in the past. Determined, Carolina decided to do something she had long avoided. Visit the house where she grew up, in the same neighborhood where she had lost Rex and so many other memories. With a tight heart, she attached Rex's leash and set out, choosing to walk, as it felt like the best way to face the past. When they arrived, Carolina felt a knot in her stomach. The garden was overgrown, and the rusty fence was crumbling, but childhood memories flooded her mind, both joyful and painful. Rex stayed silently by her side, as if recognizing the place. With a deep sigh, she knocked on the door. A woman she didn't know answered, explaining that she had bought the house years ago. Carolina gave a shy smile and asked about the previous family. The woman didn't know much, but mentioned that some old items had been left in the basement and offered to let her look. Hesitantly, Carolina entered, feeling the walls echo stories from a distant time. In the basement, she found a small wooden box with her name scrawled on it. Inside were old photographs, childhood drawings, and a sealed envelope. With trembling hands, she opened it and read a letter from her father, filled with regret. He apologized for taking Rex away and confessed he should never have made that decision. At the end, he wrote that he hoped Rex would one day find his way back, for the dog had always been stronger than he was. Tears streamed down Carolina's face as she realized the letter confirmed what she had always felt in her heart. Rex had never stopped searching for her, and now they were together again. Looking at Rex, who settled beside her, she smiled and whispered, "I think we've finally arrived where we belong. Home."